This episode was produced using AI-generated voices and scripting. Okay, here's what I want to start with. Anthropic is supposedly one of the most well-funded AI companies on the planet. Billions in the bank, and an open-source project that you can run on your laptop for free is apparently threatening their monetization strategy. Soren, how does that even happen?
Because Anthropic made a strategic bet that developer tools could be a revenue center, not just a distribution channel. And that bet is looking shakier by the week.
So Goose, for anyone who hasn't been following, it's an open source AI coding agent. It basically replicates a lot of what Claude Code does, the terminal-based coding assistant that Anthropic launched and has been pushing pretty aggressively. And Goose does it for free.
Right? And the important nuance here is that Goose isn't just some weekend hackathon project. It's backed by Block, Jack Dorsey's company. It supports multiple model providers. You can plug in Claude, GPT-4, local models, whatever you want. It's model agnostic, which is the part that should terrify Anthropic more than the price tag.
Wait, so you're saying the threat isn't that it's free? It's that it decouples the agent from the model?
Exactly. And that's the thing everyone keeps getting wrong. The headline is free tool threatens paid tool. That's boring. That's not the story. The story is that Goose proves you don't need Anthropic's wrapper to get Anthropic's model working as a coding agent. The agent layer is commoditizing in real time.
Okay, but let me push back on that. Claude Code isn't just a wrapper, right? Anthropic would argue there's deep integration between the model and the tool, that they can optimize things in ways a third party can't.
Ugh, they would argue that. And sure, there are some optimizations you can do when you control the model and the interface. Prompt caching, context window management, some of the tool use orchestration. But here's the honest truth. Most developers can't tell the difference. The vibes-based coding experience is close enough that the marginal improvement doesn't justify the cost for a huge chunk of the market.
Vibes-based coding experience. I love that. That's going on a t-shirt.
But I'm serious. When you're sitting in a terminal and you say, refactor this module, or write tests for this function, the output quality between Claude Code and Goose running Claude's API it's narrow. It's really narrow.
So here's my first why should anyone care moment. If you're a developer, and I know a lot of you listening are, why would you pay Anthropic for Claude Code when you can get basically the same thing through Goose and just pay for API tokens?
That's the question that keeps Anthropic's product team up at night. Because the answer for most individual developers is you wouldn't. The value proposition of Claude Code has to be something beyond just Claude and a terminal. It has to be enterprise features, team collaboration, compliance, audit trails, the boring stuff,
The boring stuff that actually makes money.
right? But Anthropic hasn't built most of that yet. They're still in the phase of trying to get developers addicted to the workflow. And now Goose is offering that same addictive workflow without the lock-in.
Let me throw a contrarian take at you. Maybe this doesn't matter at all. Maybe Anthropic never planned to make serious money from Claude Code directly. Maybe it's always been a funnel to API usage.
See, that's the charitable interpretation, and I think it was true 6 months ago. But look at how they've been pricing and positioning it recently. The max plan, the tiered usage limits, they're clearly trying to build a SaaS business around this. You don't create tiered subscription pricing for something that's just a marketing funnel.
Fair point.
And here's the thing that's actually counterintuitive. Goose might be good for Anthropic's API revenue even as it kills their tools revenue, because every Goose user who picks Claude as their backend model is still paying Anthropic for tokens. Anthropic just doesn't get the tool margin on top.
So Anthropic becomes the gas station instead of the car company.
That's a great analogy. And the gas station business is fine. It's a real business, but it's a very different business than what investors are pricing in when they give Anthropic a $60+ billion valuation.
Okay, I want to dig into the open source dynamics here because I think there's something people are missing. Goose isn't the only one. You've got Aider, you've got Continue, you've got a dozen other open source coding agents. Why is Goose the one getting attention?
Couple reasons. One, the block backing gives it institutional credibility. Two, it's genuinely well architected. The extension system is solid. Three, and this is a cynical answer, the timing is perfect. Developers just saw their Claude Code bills and went, there has to be another way.
The best marketing is your competitor's invoice.
Honestly, yeah. And I want listeners to think about something here. Think about the pattern. Every time a company tries to build a proprietary layer on top of an AI model, open source catches up in what? 3 months? 6 months? We saw it with ChatGPT wrappers. We saw it with RAG tools. We're seeing it now with coding agents.
So you're saying the agent layer is inherently unmodable?
I'm saying the agent layer as it currently exists, which is basically prompt orchestration plus tool use plus some UI. Yeah, it's extremely hard to defend. The moat has to come from somewhere else. Data flywheels, proprietary integrations, network effects. And coding agents don't have strong network effects.
Hmm. Unless you're GitHub Copilot, which has the distribution advantage of being inside VS Code already.
Right, and that's actually the real competitive threat to both Goose and Claude Code. Microsoft has the IDE. They have the repos, they have the enterprise contracts. Everyone's so focused on the Goose versus Claude Code narrative that they're ignoring the gorilla sitting in the corner of the room.
Okay, but let's stay on Anthropic for a second, because I want to challenge the premise a little bit. Is it really true that Goose replicates Claude Code's core functionality, or is that just the open source hype machine doing its thing?
It's both. Goose does replicate the core loop. You describe what you want, it reads your code base, it makes changes, it can run commands. That's the 80% use case. But Claude Code has some genuinely sophisticated stuff around extended thinking, multi-file reasoning with large context windows, and the permission model for autonomous execution. Goose is catching up, but there is a gap in the tail cases.
So, the 20% gap.
Yeah, and here's where I'll say something that might annoy the open source crowd. That 20% matters a lot for professional use. When you're working on a large code base, I'm talking hundreds of files, complex dependencies, the quality of context management makes or breaks the experience. Claude Code's ability to leverage Anthropic's extended context and caching is a real advantage today.
Today being the operative word.
Today being the very operative word, because Goose's architecture is designed to be model agnostic. And as context windows get bigger and cheaper across all providers, that advantage erodes fast.
I want to go somewhere uncomfortable. Let's talk about what this means for Anthropic's business model overall. Because this isn't just about one product. If the developer tools segment can't be monetized at a premium, what does that do to the whole thesis?
Ugh, this is a conversation that VCs don't want to have. Anthropic's pitch to investors has always been, we'll build the safest, most capable models, and we'll capture value through the application layer. The model part, they're delivering. Claude is genuinely excellent. But the application layer part, that's where open source keeps punching them in the face.
So they end up being a model provider competing on capabilities and price, which is.
Which is a comedy business with massive capital requirements. It's not a great place to be, and I want to be clear. I think Anthropic is a phenomenal research organization. They're doing important work on safety and alignment, but the business model needs to work for the research to continue, and the business model depends on capturing more value than just API tokens.
Let me play devil's advocate from the other side now. Maybe Anthropic should just embrace this. Make Claude the best model for coding agents. Open up the APIs even more. Let 1,000 gooses bloom. Win at the model layer.
And that might be the right strategy, but it requires accepting a fundamentally different margin structure. You're choosing to be TSMC instead of Apple. Both are great businesses, but they're valued very differently.
I want to bring something else up that I think is underexplored. The trust question. When you use Claude Code, you're inside Anthropic's ecosystem. There's some accountability. When you use Goose with a random model provider, who's responsible when the agent deletes your production database?
That's a real concern, and it's actually one of the few genuine advantages proprietary tools have. Anthropic can offer SLAs, they can offer support, they can offer insurance effectively for enterprise customers. Our tool broke your thing, we'll help fix it. Open source can't make that promise.
So the enterprise play is still viable.
The enterprise play is always viable if you execute on it. But, and I want listeners to really hear this, enterprise sales cycles are long, they're expensive, and they require a different kind of company than Anthropic currently is. You need a sales team, a customer success team, SOC 2 compliance, all of the boring infrastructure. Anthropic is an AI lab that's trying to become a software company. That transition is harder than people think.
You know who did that transition well? OpenAI.
OpenAI had a 2-year head start and Microsoft's enterprise machinery behind them. Anthropic is Amazon, but AWS's go-to-market motion for Bedrock is very different from what Anthropic needs for Claude Code.
Let's zoom out. I think there's a bigger pattern here that goes beyond just Anthropic and Goose. Are we watching the AI tool market bifurcate in real time? Free and open at the bottom, proprietary and enterprise at the top, with nothing viable in the middle?
Yes, and I've been saying this for months. The middle is death in AI tools. If you're charging $15 or $20 a month for a coding assistant that's slightly better than the free alternative, you're in no man's land. You're not cheap enough to be default, and you're not premium enough to justify procurement.
Which is exactly where Claude Code's pricing sits right now.
Exactly where it sits. And Goose just drew a bright line under that problem.
Okay, I want to ask you something direct. If you were advising Anthropic right now, what would you tell them to do about Goose specifically?
I tell them to ignore Goose specifically and focus on the structural problem. Goose isn't the threat. The commoditization of the agent layer is the threat. You don't beat that by making Claude Code slightly better. You beat it by building something that can't be replicated by an open source project with a good weekend.
Such as?
Deep code-based understanding that persists across sessions. Real team collaboration features where multiple developers work with the same AI context. Integration with internal company knowledge. Documentation, tickets, design docs. Things that require state, data, and lock-in. The stuff that open source is historically bad at because it requires infrastructure.
So basically become a platform, not a tool.
Become a platform, not a tool. That's right. Tools get commoditized. Platforms create ecosystems.
Here's what I keep coming back to though. Every AI company says they're going to become a platform. Very few actually do. What makes you think Anthropic can pull it off when they're primarily a research organization?
I'm honestly not sure they can, and I think that's the uncomfortable truth. Anthropic's competitive advantage is in research. Their models are exceptional. Their safety work is genuinely world-class. But platform building is a completely different muscle, and I haven't seen strong evidence they have it.
That's a pretty damning assessment.
It's not damning, it's realistic. They can hire for it, they can acquire for it. But they need to move fast because the window where developers are choosing their primary AI coding tool, that window is open right now and it's closing.
Let me throw one more thing at the audience. If you're a developer right now and you're choosing between Claude Code, Goose, Copilot, Cursor, I want you to think about what you're actually optimizing for. Is it cost? Is it quality? Is it the ecosystem? Because the answer to that question determines who wins this market, and most people haven't thought about it carefully.
And I'd add, think about what you're giving up. When you use Claude Code, you're giving Anthropic data about how developers actually code. That data is incredibly valuable for training future models. When you use Goose locally, you're keeping that data. That's a trade-off most developers don't even realize they're making.
Oh, that's a good point. The data angle.
It's huge, and it cuts both ways. Anthropic having that data makes their models better at coding, which makes Claude Code better, which creates a flywheel. If everyone switches to Goose, Anthropic loses that signal. But, and here's the counterintuitive part, they still get signal through the API, just less structured signal. So the data mode is real, but it's leaky.
A leaky moat. Not exactly the kind of moat that justifies a $60 billion valuation.
No, it's not.
Let me ask a totally different question. Does Goose actually survive long term? Or does it end up like every other open source developer tool that gets hot for 6 months and then dies when the maintainers get bored or get a quai hired?
This is where the block backing matters. It's not a passion project. Block has engineering resources. They presumably use Goose internally. That gives it a sustainability floor that most open source projects don't have. But, and this is important, Block's incentives aren't purely altruistic. They want Goose to exist because it reduces their dependence on any single AI vendor. It's a strategic play.
So Block gets vendor optionality and the developer community gets a free tool. That's a nice alignment of incentives.
It's a great alignment until Block decides to pivot or deprioritize. We've seen this movie before. Google with Angular, Facebook with Parse. Corporate-backed open source is stable until it's not.
All right, let's bring this home. Big picture. What does the Goose situation tell us about the AI industry right now?
It tells us that we're in the compress everything phase. The time between a company launching a product and an open source alternative appearing is shrinking to near zero. That's brutal for anyone trying to build a product business on top of AI capabilities. The model providers have a window, and it's getting shorter, to figure out where their durable value actually lives.
And where does it live?
In the models themselves for now, in unique data eventually, in ecosystems if they can build them, but not in tools, not in wrappers, not in agents that can be replicated by a smart team with access to the same APIs.
So to summarize, Goose isn't killing Claude Code. It's revealing that Claude Code's business model was always fragile. The real question is whether Anthropic can build something that an open source project can't copy in a quarter.
That's exactly right. And I'd say it to anyone building in this space, not just Anthropic. If your product is a thin layer on top of an API, you're living on borrowed time. The open source community is faster than you, more motivated than you, and they work for free. You need something they can't replicate, or you need to join them.
Work for free, the most terrifying competitive advantage in software.
Always has been.
All right, that's the show. Think about what we said about the middle being death in AI tools. If you're building there, get out. Go up or go open. There's no in between anymore. We'll catch you next time.